Welcome everyone to this session on the Big Blue Button world, using Moodle and BigBlueButton to deliver a national online program in England. It's my pleasure to introduce Paul Chillingworth. Paul is a tuition coordinator for MEI, Mathematics Education International, Mathematics in Education and Industry, for 10 years. And prior to that, he worked in schools in England and Hong Kong. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fred, for inviting me to speak today. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you. As you said, Fred, I work for MEI. I'll just explain what MEI does. We are called Maths in Education and Industry. It's a bit of an old terminology. We've also have the strapline sort of Math Education Innovators, but it's a charity based in England that tries to improve lives through advances in maths education. What we try to do is to raise the quality of maths education and improve sort of access to high quality maths education. We try to promote the relevance of maths education to everyone and make all young people feel secure and confident in using maths as they start their adult life. MEI has, in its role as a charity, runs a number of different programs. Some of these are funded by private sources of funding, and some are funded by the UK government. I happen to work on the project funded by the UK government, which is known as the Advanced Maths Support Programme. Now, unlike in other jurisdictions where maths is a compulsory subject post-16, so compulsory throughout high school, for example. In fact, in the United Kingdom, particularly in England, not everyone takes maths. What they tend to do is to take 4 subjects, 3 or 4 elective subjects, and maths is optional. What we try to do is to increase the number of students taking maths qualifications post-16, and there are a number of different qualifications. There's a core maths, which is sort of more basic qualification, a bit like maths studies in IB. And then there's higher level qualifications, AS and A-levels, A-level qualifications. And it's a bit complicated, but essentially there are 2 different A-levels that you can do in maths. There's maths A-level, but there's also further maths A-level as well. So part of our remit is to increase the number of students that are taking A-level maths and A-level further maths, and also the number perhaps who are not quite so serious mathematicians that are taking the more basic course in core maths. So that's really part of the aim of that particular program. So the AMSP, the Advanced Maths Support Program, helps schools who are unable to offer the second A-level in further maths. So further maths A-level is a bit higher than maths A-level and contains content which is often required for more sort of advanced courses at university. So some universities will require students to take further maths as part of the entrance requirements. At the moment, around about 75% of schools in England offer the further maths A-level, but other schools either have small numbers of students who wish to take it, or probably more often than not, lack the suitably qualified staff to teach further maths A-level. I mean, one of the things that we do is actually offer professional development for teachers to skill them in teaching further maths A-level as well as maths A-level. But the thing that I want to talk about this evening is our online tuition for students for further maths. So for those 25% of schools that don't offer further maths, what we try to do is to provide a provision for them to enable those students to access the further maths A-level, which they might need to go on to further study. So each year we provide a program for those students It varies in number. It can be anywhere between about 120 this year up to about 180 the previous year. For students from up to 70, probably 60 to 70 different schools across the country. And we get them together. We get them together of an evening in BigBlueButton in groups of 6 to 8. However, we only have one 75-minute lesson each week with these students, and that's mainly to do with the way in which the program is funded, whereas the recommended contact time for teaching A-level further maths in schools is 5 hours a week. So we have a bit of a problem there. So I wonder whether people have any suggestions as to how we might overcome that problem. And perhaps you can put your thoughts in the chat. So we really need 5 hours a week, but we only have just over an hour a week. I see Fred has suggested flipped classroom. Just wait, I think there might be...
Fred mencionó.
Yeah, and remote learning. Yeah, so what we try to do is to structure a course in such a way that we maximize the use of that contact time that we have. But what we do ask students to do is to do some preparation beforehand. So our model is that each week the students on the course will watch between 4 to 7 short videos that introduce the concepts to them. We've produced those videos. Those videos have been produced by experts, subject experts. We actually have 4 different specifications that we cover. So schools can choose which specification they're going to enter the students for. So we've actually produced them to cover the different specifications that are available. And those are actually publicly available on YouTube anyway, so anybody can access those. Then we have other resources that students can access in Integral, which is our learning platform, which is Moodle based. And we have, we host the videos there, but we also have things such as walkthroughs, interactive books, and notes and examples. Then we ask them, having done those, we ask them to attempt some exercises, and we start off with a fairly easy exercise, and then we go on to a slightly harder exercise. And the lesson is focused around emphasizing the key points and going over any questions that students might have had difficulty with. And indeed, perhaps presenting them with a novel question, a novel problem to work on together. And then after the lesson, they complete a multiple choice test online, and then sometime later, as part of a summative exercise, they might attempt a written assignment, which they then email to their tutor. And tutors are available by email during the week to answer any queries from students. So it is very much a flipped learning model. Some students find that okay. Other students, I think, they take some time to get used to it. I'll just screen share and just show you sort of the way in which it works, what the course structure looks like. Can you see that, Fred? Yes, okay, great. Okay, so I appreciate you might not all be mathematicians, but there's a subject in further maths called complex numbers. And so students would access the course area on complex numbers. And within the course area, there are a number of videos that they watch first of all. And these videos, as I said, have been written by subject experts. there are some notes and examples, which is a bit like a textbook. There's also now some interactive textbooks as well that students can work through. And these walkthroughs, which I think are really, really good. So I'll just sort of just show you what one of those looks like. So in the walkthroughs, the students are given some definitions and then they're given some questions to answer. So might be like a matching activity, and then they can, they can work their way through it. So there are some definitions. They can change the values of some of the constants and things like that in there, and then they can answer the question about a generalization. So it takes them through the main concepts, providing examples, giving definitions, and then an opportunity to answer some questions. And indeed, they can do this as many times as they like. So they will have watched a video on these concepts, but this is a sort of step-by-step approach that they can work through. And then there's a summary at the end. So the weekly lesson, as part of this structure, reviews the learning that the students might have already done during the week, or they should have done during the week, that they should have prepared. The tutors and the students will work through questions from the exercises in Moodle, in Integral, and also from other sources. So it might be a sort of A-level question or something like that. These are hosted in BigBlueButton. Our BigBlueButton rooms are hosted by Blindsides, and they are in groups of somewhere between 6 and 8. I mean, some of them groups are smaller. It just depends on the choices they've made for their specification, and there is a degree of elective options as well as part of the course. So it rather depends on that as well. The functionality that we use in our lessons, so we use chat quite extensively. We do encourage students to use their microphones as well. Sometimes they're not that keen to use their microphones. We really do drive that quite hard. But sometimes the chat is actually, a quick chat or an emoji, helps you just get sort of instant feedback from the students about something, and then we can move on. At other times, we will use the poll functionality of BigBlueButton and set up polls in advance. Some of my tutors are very keen on polls, and they do that quite extensively. I think the key thing that really makes it work for us as mathematicians is the whiteboard and the whiteboard tools. And I know that Blindsides have done an awful lot of work supporting the development of this, and continue to do so. And for us, the whiteboard is the thing that really makes BigBlueButton. We've had, within our organisation, we're quite a broad organisation. We've got a number of staff, and we do a lot of other work online, and we don't always use BigBlueButton for that. Some of my colleagues will do Zoom webinars, etc. But for teaching in these small groups, the whiteboard is just ideal. And the ability to draw diagrams, the ability to get students to write on the board is, that's the way we do math. It's not, that's the way we would do it in a classroom. And that really is one of the beauty of using BigBlueButton. It's, we can do math properly. Increasingly, we are also using other software. And again, you probably have to be a mathematician to appreciate this, but there may be those of you that have used Desmos Classroom, which I think is now called Amplify, but we use Desmos a lot for for simulations in maths and as a tool. And I'll just show you the sort of thing that we might be using it for. So we do a bit of 3D geometry here. So let's have a look at this. So this is Desmos 3D. So what I'm doing here is I've typed in some equations of planes. I've got 2 planes in red and blue. And I can see that these two planes look as though they intersect in a line. And then what I've done is I put in the equation of a third plane that's got two unknown constants, A and B. And the question I might ask is that, can I find values of A and B such that all three planes meet in a common line? And the ability to, that looks as though that's nearly there. The ability to sort of share these visualizations is really, again, is very powerful. And, you know, that's increasingly a tool that we're using quite a lot in our work. And if you are a mathematician and you haven't seen Desmos, I would heartily recommend it. I think it is a US-based organization. So it has a lot of statistical functionality, which it can work out probabilities quite quickly and easily. So definitely use it for that as well. So from a sort of a supervisor point of view, BigBlueButton functionality that we find very useful, the ability to lock down certain functions. You may think, well, that's a pretty negative thing, but actually I think it's a positive thing, because what it means is it's fairly easy to set the you know, to lock down the things that you don't particularly want. So we actually don't want students to have private chat. That's a bit of a safeguarding issue for us. So we're quite happy with public chat, but we don't want students to be able to chat with each other. So it's easy to lock that down. What is really useful for us is the integration with Moodle, the integration with our integral learning platform, meaning that not only is it easy to locate the classrooms, but also it's easy to find recordings. And, you know, that's something which, again, if you use something like Zoom, you're ending up sending out links, and often people come back and say, oh, I haven't got the password, etc. With BigBlueButton integrated into Moodle, everything's in the same place, and it's really easy to find. And students, whilst we do like them to attend live, some can't, and they need to access the recordings, and students may well want to go back and look at the recordings again and just pause them at the right place. So having them easy to find is really important. And again, as a supervisor, it's easy to see who's attended the sessions. And actually, I can also see the level of interaction in the session as well. And that is a really useful tool that's been, you know, that's been implemented as well. So, yeah. And, you know, it's on top of this, the level of support that's provided by Blindsides is, you know, is really superb. And it's, you know, if there are issues, and occasionally there are, but, you know, often there aren't, but on the odd occasion where there is an issue, Blindsides are really helpful in troubleshooting and providing support. And that relationship has been invaluable in the last few years. So I'll just sort of end with a few comments from students about the course. I'll start with a few positive ones. I won't read them. I'll just let you read them. I'll just put them up there. So we do ask students to complete a survey each year. We also get comments from students often when they receive their examination results in August and they're going to university, and they send us comments as well. So some students adapt to it really well. They run with it. They've got good independent learning skills, which in a course like this is actually probably more important than the level of mathematical ability, is the ability to work independently. So those students who can do that, you know, often get a lot out of the course. They do well. They go on to get high grades and access the universities they want to. Other students perhaps struggle a little bit more. It's not what they expected, and they do find it hard to cope. And perhaps sometimes schools aren't very good at explaining to them what the course is actually about. You know, I prefer it face-to-face. Well, we all prefer face-to-face teaching, but unfortunately that wasn't an option for your school. So what we're trying to do is to provide a substitute. And we do encourage students to use their textbooks anyway. So, you know, using other sources is a very sensible thing to do. So in the survey that we gave last year, 77 students responded to the survey. I think I'm up to about 65 for this year, with slightly less students. So it's a fairly good response rate. So it would have been 77 out of about 150 or something like that. This year, I think it's about 64 out of 110. So, a good response rate. And, we overall, the great majority of students are fairly satisfied with working this way. There's a small minority who I think who find it a bit of a struggle. And that's why I really stress to schools, it's really important to explain to the students the nature of the course, the way in which they're expected to learn, and also to support the students as well. So we do emphasize to schools that they need to support students. They need to, take an interest in what they're doing and make sure that they're on track. And in fact, as part of our Moodle, teachers in schools can see the progress of their students on the course. That's really important for them to be able to do that as well. And then this was just a comment from a student at the end of the course, once they'd actually got into university. So the A* grade is the top grade. So we have grades A to E, but we also have an A*, which is above an A, which is sort of the highest grade. And there's one final comment. Anyway, I've probably spoken for longer than I anticipated, but I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might have about our course, or indeed how we use our Moodle and how we use BigBlueButton and Blindsides.
Paul, thank you. That was great. Especially just walking us through kind of like what MEI does and how students interact with you and your instructors and the tools you use, and also just the feedback. It wasn't a feature or a technology. It was more of a personal, and that was good.
Yeah, I mean, but it's enabled by, all of this is enabled by the technology, and
Yes.
it's BigBlueButton is very, very much part of what we do and fits in very nicely, and we're able to sort of use the time, that really crucial time in lessons effectively. At least that's what I feel.
That's great. A question for you: how many of your students may do like try to learn on their mobile phone as opposed to at a desktop?
Well, yeah, not all students will necessarily have a desktop at home or even a tablet. So there are a few students who will join on their phones, but they get a better experience if they join on their desktop or laptop. And we do encourage that. But we say at the end of the day, if you don't have access to that, then use your phone. And although they're not getting the full functionality, I think they can still get a lot out of it by joining on their phone. Yeah, so the mouse tool, the Desmos is, Michael, is just open source. If you go to Desmos, just go to, if you just go to desmos.com and then click on Graphing Calculator, it's absolutely free. And the beauty is it's web-based. And students can actually, talking about mobile phones, you can do a lot on a mobile phone. Thanks, Red. Yeah, but I definitely encourage you to explore that, because it's wonderful, wonderful software it's a bit like, I don't know quite where the funding's come from, but they seem to have a big team of people working to develop this. And we suggest functionality, and a few months later it's added. It's a bit like with Blindsides. We have a voice, we talk to them, they listen, things happen. So really would encourage the use of that.
Wow, I'm interested to see whether we could incorporate into BigBlueButton through a plugin, so it actually appears in the presentation area. Yeah.
Because it's interesting, because with I teach teachers statistics, so I do some professional development for teachers and statistics, and we're used to using it all the time now. And we keep switching from our slides to our, to our share our screen to show it on Desmos, because well, statistics should be a visual thing,
Yes.
and you shouldn't really ever do any work in statistics without trying to produce a visualization of the data. So I think it's a really powerful tool.
Nice. And we actually have a feature coming out, which is like you start sharing your screen. You can use one button to flip the slides and then one button to flip back the screens.
Oh, that would be really good. Because I thought, as you notice, I'm not the quickest at switching from one to the other.
We're watching. We're thinking about how to improve it always. This was great, Paul. I want to thank you again on behalf of the Big Blue Button community for coming out, sharing your experiences, sharing the feedback from students, helping us empathize with what you do and the impact that you have. And this is really good. Makes me feel really good to know that we're helping students, who would otherwise may not have access to advanced math. And as someone who took a math degree, thanks for all your good work.
Right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And thanks everyone for their comments and interactions.